welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. So today's video, in honor of Valentine's Day, I am making my romance book recommendation. I have 5 books to talk to you guys about today. Some are new, some are older, but these are all romance books that I really liked, really enjoyed, and I want to talk to you guys about it. So I'm going to get started with probably one of my favorite book of all time, and one of my favorite romance book of all time, and it is The Edge of Never by J.A. Redmansky. I love this book. This is the very first new adult book that I had read. I think it's like one of the first ones that I read. And this is about a girl named Cameron who, like, in the beginning of the book, something happens and she basically decides to pack her bags and leave, take a like Greyhound bus and just leave for the middle of the United States. But on her ride to, I don't remember where she's supposed to go, but basically on her bus ride she meets a guy named Andrew, and they basically end up having a road trip. I love road trip books. It's one of my favorite tropes in general, but I love this book. This is dual points of view, so you get the points of view of Cameron and then of Andrew, and they both have like backstory that are really like hard, I would say, and like different. And this was such a good book. It's a coming of age story as well. This book has my heart. I had reread this book a few times now, and I hadn't reread it in a while, so I think I'm actually going to reread this book for Valentine's Day. But this is one of my favorite book. I cried in this book at the end. I still remember to this day the day that I read this book. I read it in one day, in one sitting, and yeah, I still remember to this day the like moment I finished this book. This was such an amazing book. I loved it. Recommend this book enough, and I don't think people are talking about this book enough. It is an older book, but still, this is an amazing book. So yeah. The next book I have to talk to you guys about is The Bromance Book Club by Lisa K. Adams. This was such a fun book. This is about a guy who's a footballer. No, a baseball. He plays baseball in this book. And his marriage is on like the verge of divorce, and he basically ends up joining a book club, a romance book club. It's a bunch of guys who basically reads romance book together, and this book was such a cute book. I really liked it. I loved Gavin in this book. It was such a cute book. I loved this book. It was really good. And it was so different too as well. Like, it's such a different romance book than any other ones, because we are following him mostly. We are following a bunch of guys, like sports guys, like guys that you wouldn't think would read romance books. So it was such a different book than a lot of other ones that I read. Like, it's such a different romance book than a lot of the romance book that we read. So this was really fun and really good, and I highly recommend this book. The next book I want to talk to you guys about is another new adult book, and it is Birthday Girl by Penelope Douglas. This was such a good book. I love that book. I've seen a few people read this book and recommending. It is kind of a taboo romance because it is an older guy with a younger girl, and he's 38, so he's like almost 40, and I think she's 19 in the book. So she's pretty young, and he's like older, and he is basically the father of her boyfriend, and it is a love story. So it's a forbidden love story, and it was so good. It is a new adult, so there were a lot of sex scenes in that book. So if you guys don't like that, then I would stay away from that book. But the chemistry and the relationship between the two main characters was amazing, and I loved it. And you really get to fall for both of them, and you really get to fall for their relationship and understand why they would fall for each other. I really liked that book. It was a really fun book. I still to this day think about this book from time to time, which just shows you how that book like left a print on me, and I really enjoyed it, and I highly recommend that book. The next book I have to talk to you guys about is a Colleen Hoover book, and it is Maybe Someday by Colleen Hoover. This is one of her older book, I think. It came out a few years ago. Yeah, it came out in 2014, so we don't hear too much about this book, but this was such a cute book. I love this book. This is basically about a girl named Sydney who lives the perfect life. She has a steady job, she has a boyfriend, she lives with her best friend. Everything is going for her until one day she discovers that her boyfriend is cheating on her. And so she kind of is left off wondering what to do and like where to go with him. And then enters her neighbor Ridge. He is kind of this musician, like dark and like, you know, he's a musician, so he's like dark and mysterious, and we don't really know too much about him. And there's this big like twist in the beginning of the book, which I don't want to talk about because it is a spoiler, but it happens at the beginning of the book. And this book was so good. I love that book. There is a playlist that comes with this book. It's by Griffin Peterson, which has the same name. So it is such a fun experience to basically read this book and listen to the playlist, because the playlist it's basically the songs that we see in this book. It was such a fun like experience to read this book while listening to the playlist. This is such a fun book. I loved it, and I love music in general, and I love like musicians, so maybe that's why I love this book so much. But I really wanted to recommend this book because I don't feel like we talk enough about this one from Colleen Hoover, and it was such a fun book and such a cute book, and I really liked it. And then the last book I have to talk to you guys about is the Unhoneymooners by Christina Lauren. We cannot have a romance book recommendation without Christina Lauren. I think, you know, they're the queens of romance book. So this is the one that I chose. This is my favorite one from them. It's a hate to love. It's about this girl who goes to her sister's wedding, and then everyone in that wedding ends up having food poisoning. So she ends up taking her sister's honeymoon, and with the only other person from the wedding that wasn't sick, and it was the best man, and they hate each other. It's a fake dating as well, because they have to pretend that they're dating. I read this last year, like at pretty much the same time as right now, and I was supposed to go on a trip, like a tropical trip, and it got cancelled because of COVID, but this got me so much in the mood. It was such a fun book. It is the perfect summer read, or winter if you want to like get away from the winter and think about like summer thing. This was such a fun book. I loved their relationship. I loved their chemistry. I loved the Olive, her name is. I loved Olive as the main character, which I mean doesn't happen that often with me, because I usually don't love the girls in the romance book. I really liked Olive in this book. So that's all I have to say with this book, but I highly recommend if you guys haven't checked this book out yet. This is pretty much it. These were all the romance book I have to talk to you guys about. Leave your recommendation of romance book in the comments down below. I would love to check them out, and I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I will see you guys next time. Bye!